I am having way too much fun this very early in the morning on Thursday here in the Eastern Coast. If you are having a great afternoon or an evening, I know everyone's from all over the world, so definitely let us know where in the world you are watching. I see May King is on. I see lots of people hiding. Let us know if you are watching and where you're watching from. And bring your questions. This is Ecamm Masterclass. This is an interactive session, so want to hear all your questions, your thoughts, your feelings. Today we are talking all about the internet. I couldn't think of a better way to line up this topic, but I think it's a really important one. So I'm super excited to dive in. I'm super excited to learn a ton alongside with all of you. And we have our special guest, Dan. Dan is here. And it
Woo!
is
I'm in the house.
afternoon evening there in the UK. Am I correct?
3 o'clock in the afternoon, in
Ah,
fact.
tea time. I'm jealous. I left my coffee
Yes.
downstairs.
I'm sorry. It's not my fault. It's kind of your fault.
It's all good. Happy Thursday, David. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Dan,
Yeah, we got
I
some people.
I
I got
love that
making as
you're taking the
well.
time to hang out with us today. I will say to everyone watching that this topic actually came out of a conversation that you and I were having. We were just catching up and chatting, and you were blowing my mind with all of your amazing facts and kind of pro tips as we're thinking about when the best
Mhm.
time is to connect, when, as you're thinking through and planning out your live show, what you need to know. So for people that don't know you yet, we've done a few different events with you, but can you just give us a little bit of background on who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So, in short, I am a business coach and a mentor. So, I work mainly with creative entrepreneurs because, frankly, I prefer working with creative entrepreneurs. um, I can give you a little bit of background on me, historically speaking, because it helps you with context of what we're going to be talking about here as well today. So I didn't go to university or college. I left school quite early, just after my GCSEs. Over here in the UK, it's like high school to you,
Mhm.
um, and it's a bizarre start to my career. It was like really weird. I wasn't expecting it at all.
I think it's a
Um,
perfect start. It's a perfect start to the career.
because it gives you context to everything we're going to be talking about and why I actually know a lot about this stuff. So yes, I'm a business coach and mentor now because I spent the past 20 years growing and scaling businesses for venture capital and private equity backed ventures and my own businesses as well. So business coaching and mentorship is what I've been doing for, you know, decades along with scaling. So happy days. But that's not where it started. Where it actually started was me at the age of 17, just kind of almost, well, not even almost, yes, literally falling into a job that I never expected I was going to fall into. um, so I left school. I went into well, actually, I'll tell you a bit more about that as well, because I hugely bullied and everything at school. So I hated school. So I left just literally on a whim. So the head of the sixth form, which is just after high school, he was like, "You don't have to be here, because I wasn't happy. I wasn't showing up to classes. It's like, you don't have to be here. At this stage, you can just leave." And I was like, "Really? Can I?
Great.
I what do I have to do that?" And he goes, "Well, you just tell me you want to leave. You fill out a form, and then you leave." And I'm like, "Okay, let's do that." So I left school. I went home and told my mum I've left school, and she was like, "You what?" I was like, "I left school, but it's okay. I've got a plan." Because on my way out of school, and this is relevant, on the way out of school, I went to the library and looked on other alternatives to university and education and everything, and apprenticeships and apprenticeship-based programs. There was loads of them around. I was like, well, I've always liked dabbling in computers and tech. So I was like, I'll do that for a couple of months until I figure out what I want to do.
Yeah.
And a few weeks in, I was sent on, it was supposed to be interview training and preparation, kind of like exposure, almost like work experience,
Hmm.
to see what interviews are like in businesses. And so I went to this interview, and the following day, I got a call from the head of the apprenticeship scheme, who said, "Come into my office. I need to talk to you." And I'm thinking, what did I do? I thought it went okay. I didn't swear. I was okay, surely. But it was like, "I don't know what you said, but they want to offer you a job." And I'm like, "What? What do you mean they want to offer me a job?" And I was like, "Well,
Yes.
they
I've done
they
it.
wanted to offer you a job." And I'm like, what kind of a job? And they said it was the first line support engineer for a business internet provider. So there's me. I literally had left school. 4 weeks later, I started a job, like literally from the playground. I was immature. I was completely clueless. I had no idea what I was doing. My social skills were basically through the toilet. They were like in the drain. They were kind of like making their way to the sewage outlet. my social skills were appallingly bad. But then I was taking between 200 to 300 calls a day for internet service provider services. So, and at the time it was like ISDN, dial-up, leased lines, bonded connectivity. Wi-Fi wasn't even a thing back then, but it kind of was, but it was just so expensive, no one had it. And these were in the days when a 64 kilobit a second leased line would cost you anywhere between 30 to 100,000 a year.
I can still hear the dial-up sound as you're talking. The
dial-up. So 64K is dial-up.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Like it's insane money. Obviously, fast forward now, and like 64K isn't even enough to send an email. But yeah, from there, I went through different internet providers. I ran my own managed service provider business for the best part of my 20s. I was an IT manager by the age of 20. I had my own mortgage at the age of 20. Like real back in the day. Like Andrew said, way back in the day.
I love it.
Old school. But it's all progressed since then. I worked in hosting. I looked after global operations for a global hosting business for about 6-7 years, 27 data centers, 6 countries, like mad, crazy stuff.
I love it. I love it because we're going to ask you all the internet questions.
We're going to be digging into all the tech.
You will be able to help us with this. So what I wanted to talk about first when it relates to internet is I know that we often here in the Ecamm fam talk a lot about our upload speeds, and we have a debate, ongoing about whether or not you should be wired or wireless. But what we never talk about and what you and I talked about the other day, which really piqued my interest, is thinking about whether or not you are live streaming from a residential or a business address and what time of day you are live streaming at. So could you talk to us a little bit about why those two things matter and why you should be really thinking about them? What difference does it make?
Okay, so to understand that, you need to understand how the internet works.
Let's talk about how the internet works, Dan. I'm excited.
Yes. So I'm not going to go like crazy in depth and start talking about like PGP routing tables and things like that, because then they'll blow most people's brains. But basically speaking, the internet is, just think of them as a bunch of interconnected highways, right? So over here in the UK, you have motorways, and then you've got A roads, some of which are dual carriageways, some of which aren't. Then you have B roads, and you have like the busted ass country lanes that no one likes driving on.
Yeah.
And that's basically the internet. Okay. That's pretty much what the internet is. And all the interconnecting junctions and everything, they are effectively what's called, in internet terms, hops. So if you're on Route 51 and you're just driving, and it's all clear sailing, that's basically you having a direct connection from you to your streaming provider, and there's not many junctions or anything along the way.
You're winning.
But every time there's a junction, you have to slow down, right? Every time there's a junction, there's more traffic that's got to converge, and it's got to all like mesh together.
Yep.
So in internet terms, you do things like called trace routes and various kind of like problem solving methods to figure out how many hops you have to your streaming provider. So what you normally have with businesses is that businesses have an internet connection that goes pretty much from your location to the telco, like the telecoms provider, and it's directly patched from them into what's called transit, right? Which is like the internet superhighway, right? So it's very, very broad terms.
No, I love this.
And it's really, but that's really kind of like short, low latency, direct connections, job done, off you go. Now, residential, however, is built around servicing a much wider number of people, more cars, more vehicles, right? So what you tend to have there is you have all of the residential units, all of their cabling goes back into a central clustered point. That has a big, big pipe that takes it all together and then sends it off to the telco. The telco then figures out like who the hell these like thousands of people are, figures out all the routing and everything, and then off it goes on its merry way. And you have more hops, more junctions to get across. Now, what also happens in residential areas is because residential units don't spend the amount of money that's required to have direct connections, like you at Ecamm HQ when you're in the office, you'll probably have a lease line or something, or fiber internet of some form.
Yep.
That is what's called low contention bandwidth services. So contention being the number of people that share the big pipe when it gets to the telco. If any of this isn't making sense, by the way,
nope, we're good.
Stick them in the comments and let us know
in the comments. Let us know in the comments.
Contention ratio is basically how internet providers make money or not. So if you're here in the UK and say you live in the country somewhere and you've got broadband services, then chances are you will be on a 25-1 or 50-1 contention ratio, which means that the internet provider has to pay X amount of money for the big pipe that goes back to their main distribution point. But then they can divide that big pipe by 25, 50, even in some cases 100 different residential homes, because they know that chances are not all 50 or 25 or 100 of them are all going to be wanting like full bandwidth all at the same time. And when they do all want full bandwidth, the pipe's big enough where it gives them maybe half of what they would expect, but not enough that they're going to complain too much, right? Because they can just turn back to that customer and say, well, yeah, when you were trying to stream 3 Netflix movies into your house on a Saturday evening, it dropped from 4K down to 1080p for those streams because it was a very busy period of the day. But at all this other hours of the day, during off-peak hours, you have 4 times as fast internet as everyone else. And way more than you had with your previous provider. So why are you complaining?
And in many cases, a lot of them are also monopolies for this. Like we're in a neighborhood here where we don't have any options. We just have the one. So it's not like there's a lot of we can complain, but there's not a lot of things that we can do about our complaints. So it's
and that is contention ratio. That's basically where it comes from. And a lot of your streaming providers, streaming users will also not only be dealing with contention ratio on their residential neighborhood, but also contention ratio within their house, because it's the same thing. Okay. So say you've got 100 megabits of download speed in your home. We'll talk about download and upload in a minute. So you've got 100 megabits of download speed, just talking about download. And you're watching, say, 3 Netflix movies all at the same time. Netflix movie in 1080p will normally take between 3 to 5, maybe even 6 megabits a second of bandwidth per stream, right? To get, with buffering and other things, it needs to be ideally continuous bandwidth. We're going to talk about Wi-Fi and everything later on as well, and why mobile, cellular connectivity isn't great for streaming, because the operative word here is continuous bandwidth, right? So you need continuous bandwidth to download, or ideally to stream. It needs to be continuous. So that 100 meg is actually perfectly fine for you to be running multiple streams, right? Because it's only 1080p and happy days. As soon as you start going to 4K is between 10 or 12 to, in some cases, 25 megs a second. So you could be doing 4K movies, but as soon as, my son then tries to start playing something on his computer or his PlayStation, he's not old enough to have a PlayStation yet, but when he is, he will. As soon as you start doing that, then you hit the contention ratio block, and everything else gets squidged down pro rata the available bandwidth.
Well, and it's also layered too, right? Because you're talking about the amount of people within your house that are all using the internet in your house, And then
Mhm.
also the amount of people in your neighborhood who are
Yep.
all using. So, I mean, if you're in, like I am, a really like nice family neighborhood with, tons of families, we're still in the middle of pandemic. So many of these kids are home all day. So that's a lot of people using a lot of different, a lot of different tools, watching a lot of different streaming shows, having video
Mhm.
chats with their teachers, all at, all roughly at the same point. So that's definitely
Yep.
testing and pushing all of those different limits, right?
Exactly. And it's actually really, from the geek point of view, it was actually really interesting for me when I worked in the hosting business, because for those on who are watching this, whether live on replay, who um, remember when EA Games launched Star Wars.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So when the Star Wars online version all get hit the streets, as it were, um, that was a number of years ago. It flopped when it first hit. Partly because of contracts and ways in which outsourcing was done really, really badly, but partly because they massively underestimated peaks of usage.
Yeah.
So when when the Star Wars game launched, I think it was the largest online live beta game in history, and it all hit. But when you actually look at the bandwidth graphs for that launch, it's actually really interesting, because it was like, all throughout the day, hit 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's like, boom,
Way up.
massive spike. Got to about between 6 and 7, dropped down a little bit.
Yep.
From about 8 until 9, boom, massive, even bigger spike. It was huge. And then around about 9:30 to 10, it started tapering off, and then had a massive drop around midnight. And the same thing happened every single day. And they didn't have the resources in place to handle massive peaks like that.
To do anything about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that took a little while to kind of iron out the kinks on it. But when you look at the bandwidth graphs, it was actually really funny, because internally within the business, the hosting business that I was at, we actually went through the countries of the transit maps, or the bandwidth maps that we were looking at in the graphs, and we overlaid the end times on average of the schools, mainly secondary schools, in those countries.
Yep.
And it was like putting tracing paper over it. It was,
Like, well,
it was exactly.
Yeah. Super important to take note of. If you are taking notes, write this down. Be aware of when the school schedules are if you are in a residential internet area and you are trying to host or plan out a live show. If your live show is in that peak time period where kids are just getting home from school, or in the other peak time period where everyone is hitting their sofa and turning on Netflix, you are going to have some problems with your internet, because all of the usage is increasing in your area. So it's certainly worth keeping an eye on that. And as you're thinking through scheduling and planning, hugely important. It's that trace. It's predictable, right? It's something that is happening
It is.
in your area, and you have very little control over that part of it, other than when you plan out your content and how you approach your scheduling.
I mean, there are things you can do. So if I haven't actually prepared any slides or anything, because I'm not organized like that. And you are all very intelligent, smart people, and you can remember these numbers because they're not big numbers. But when you look at the internet that you've got, and we're talking about continuous versus variable in a sec, because that directly relates to Wi-Fi. Really, all you need to do is make sure you have enough upstream bandwidth, uploading speed, to do your stream consistently for the amount of time that you need to do it for, right? So what that means is, for a full HD, excuse me, I need to cough.
Mute for the
I'm still
win.
fighting this cold my daughter gave me last week. It's a complete pain in my bum. She's 3, bless her, so she brings everything back from nursery.
It's not a lot.
With love. Hi, Daddy. Snot everywhere. So you need, depending on the codec that you're using, for let's say a 1080p stream, will range between 3 to 6 meg of upstream speed. Okay, and I'll show you how to test this as well. 4K between sort of 12 or 15 up to 25 meg per stream. If you're just streaming to Facebook, and you go to 720 because they limit things at 720 anyway, and that's only like 1.5 to 3 meg.
Yeah.
So it's not massive.
Yeah.
So as long as your internet connection has consistently enough bandwidth for you to actually run your stream, you should be fine. From purely an internet point of view, right? So if you go to speedtest.net, which is a decent upload and download speed checker.
Yeah.
Speedtest.net. Just go there, do a speed test. Your download speed will be massively quicker than your upstream speed. Download doesn't matter nearly as much in streaming as upload does. If your upload is more than the numbers I've just talked about, then you should be fine. Now, where a lot of your users have problems, though, is when they're trying to stream in their home, and I'm sorry to say this, but they themselves are unknowingly often the problem. Right? And I say that with love and empathy.
Ears, but don't cover your ears. You might be the problem.
Hashtag sorry, not sorry. Because when you introduce, remember I mentioned earlier, consistent upload speed and consistent connection speed.
Yep.
There's in routing and switching in the internet world, there's actually, terms like consistent and variable when it comes to connectivity. Variable, any form of variable connection is inherently unstable. It's enough for you to, if you're on your phone, you're just sort of like searching through, whatever you're searching through, on Twitter, blah, 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 da, 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 da. It's fine because if you wait 2 seconds for a video to load or 4 seconds or 7 seconds, you don't care. You'll just wait. Your stream won't. Your stream will sit there, and if it doesn't get enough bandwidth for a few seconds, it starts buffering. And if that goes on too long, it'll drop.
Yeah.
Right? Wireless is inherently an variable-based connection. Mobile internet is inherently a variable-based connection. So if you're ever streaming on your phone, you get great quality 1 minute, and then the next minute it's all pixelated and horrible and awful looking, and then it's going back to being great again. That's why, right?
So you're inherently running a risk when you're using either your mobile connection as a hotspot or Wi-Fi, just simply because it's a variable kind of internet. Yeah,
and any form of signal that you're looking about sending across the airwaves, as it were, which is Wi-Fi, 4G, LTE, 5G, whatever. 5G. All the people saying that coronavirus spread 5G via bats. Bat sonar is not a transmitter of data that we can actually read. Just so we're clear on that one, it's not a thing, people.
Not a thing.
No, it's not a thing. We won't get into the divisive conversations though, and we have to separate the world. Yeah. So when we go to the Wi-Fi based or signal based transmissions across the airwaves, they're affected by atmospherics, ionization in the atmosphere, weather, lightning. Even if you put your microwave on in your house, lawnmowers, blenders, anything that creates electromagnetic fields and resonance and interference is going to interfere with those signals. Some will interrupt some more than others. It depends on the frequency range, and all sorts of signal-based variables. But I mean, you don't know what's going to affect it and what's not, right? Because it's inherently variable.
It's variable.
And even your Wi-Fi, most Wi-Fi these days, they'll hop between channels. So you'll have a frequency range and channels within those frequency ranges, and it will hop until it finds the channel that's the least congested. So if your neighbor on the left or even the neighbor on the right, if you're using the same channel as you, they'll kind of hop, and then their channels will hop across as well. And then the person across the road, their channels will hop. So it's constantly hopping around all the while, trying to find you the best signal, because that's what it's there to do. None of which is good for continuous streaming based data requirements.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a question coming in. I'm going to pause for a second. So Andrew wants to know, in order to optimize your bandwidth, remove competing devices from our home network. Yeah, great question. Hang on, Dan, you're muted. Hang on, I got to get my mug.
Sorry. My bad. Remove competing devices, not necessarily remove them, but certainly limit anything that they're doing. So you don't have to. I know some people who go around and turn off every single device in their house
before
they go and do a
iPads from
stream.
the kids. Send the kids outside.
Like if my daughter's got the iPad, my son's got the Android tablet, and my wife's downstairs, like watching her murder mystery programs with a cup of tea and a biscuit.
I love your wife.
Chances are, I'm like, that's not going to help me. And you could. I mean, some people do this if you've got the budget for it. I'm in the studio at the moment. The studio's not at my house because our house is small. We live in West London, where basically space is ridiculously expensive. But when we move out of London, which we're intending on doing soon, I'll say soon, probably next year now, thanks COVID. But when we do that, I'll be having my own studio, but I will most likely have a direct internet connection into my studio just for the studio. But I'll also have a connection linked between the two, so my backup will be the home Wi-Fi. So if anything happened with my connection and it wasn't affecting both connections, I'd have a backup there. But nothing would interrupt or intersect with my connection. That's how I would do it myself. But if you're just starting out, then just make sure the kids aren't streaming 4K movies.
And Anna has a question. Hi, Anna. Do you suggest us turn off our Wi-Fi on our desktop when you're hardwiring in? It's another great question.
To be fair, I would always suggest, if you're hardwiring, just hardwire. There's no point your computer. I mean, they're smart enough when it will try and pick the best, most stable connection for you. But let's face it, software is software, so you can't always rely on it to do exactly what you want it to do. So if you've got a Wi-Fi connection on the laptop and you're plugged into with a physical connection as well, why do you need both? That's kind of my argument.
Yeah. Well, we have a bunch of questions coming through. I'm going to scroll through them here, Dan.
Okay, we've entered the Q&A section.
I know, right? We'll do Q&A as we're going. Jerry wants to know, if using Wi-Fi, should we manually select a channel for the router?
That's always a difficult question to answer, because you don't know what the environment around you is going to be doing one day to the next. So, I mean, where I used to live, it was in a small, like a cloister of small houses. And most of my neighbors were elderly, didn't even have broadband. And if they did, they weren't doing anything with it. It was there because they basically bought it because they were told they needed it, but they never did. I was probably like one or two people who might have used Netflix every now and again. So I didn't really care. It wasn't like I was going to be competing heavily. But if you're in a co-working space where you've got like 20 different Wi-Fi hotspots, then they're all going to be trying to intersect with the channel you set manually. It's going to be a very much try and see situation. But it's a difficult one to ask, because it really depends on the environment and how much competition is there. If there's not much competition, set it manually. It doesn't matter. If there's lots of competition, let it do its thing, because it can do it more rapidly than you can.
Are there any options for, I'm home most of the time. I'm in the office occasionally. And I'm in a resident, obviously I'm in my home office. Is there an option? Can you reach out to your internet provider and ask to pay for a business level connection in your home to try to
business providers? They'll have business level options, and you can have business grade services. Most of the time, they'll market the differentiator on support more than the actual physical connection itself. They'll basically start talking about bandwidth limits and things like that, or they'll start talking about contention ratio. So if you're in a highly densely populated area and it offers a lower contention ratio as a business account than a residential account, then yes, that will potentially help you, especially during the peaks, because you're competing with fewer people. If the differentiator is higher levels of support and better bandwidth limits and everything, and you're not hitting those limits anyway, then there's no point, because you're going to be paying for support that you're probably not going to be using.
Yeah, that's a really good point. More questions pouring in. Thanks for all the questions, guys. All right, this one's big.
Yeah, fire away.
So my big question is, what is something simple that my guests can do to improve their experience? We often have to abandon Ecamm for Zoom or another video tool because of web interview mode, and the guest is having challenges.
Again, it will vary, which is it's annoying.
It's annoying and hard. I mean, you could give best practices over to your guest. I mean, so, and there are a couple of things too, Mike, that's worth noting. When it comes to Ecamm's interview mode, the signal that we're sending back to the guest's end is really, really meant to just be able to give them a preview. So the quality is much lower than what we are sending out for the actual feed. So it's worth just letting your guests know that in advance, because it can be sometimes a little bit of a jarring experience, because I think that the expectation for lots of guests is that it's going to be as crystal clear in what they're seeing as what's going out. And obviously our goal, as a tool for you, is to be able to send the highest quality out to wherever you're broadcasting or recording to. It's really more meant to be a preview window. So that's also just a caveat and worth letting guests know as they're joining the conversation.
I mean, I was actually going to say that, I mean, literally right now, Katie just said it, but as I'm looking at the interview screen right now,
yeah,
Katie's image on the screen actually looks pretty good. Mine looks terribly bad. Mine looks appalling.
And whereas you look great to me, so
exactly.
So it's where, yeah.
So there's an education, isn't there, around it as well?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely education around it, and we'll try to do a better job in giving you all more tools on how you can talk with your guests and get your guests set up for success. But I mean, any of these things that we've been discussing today are also applicable for all of your guests. So it's a good idea probably to, get with your guest in advance, ask them where they're at. Like, are they coming into you from, a wired or a wireless connection? Are they in their home or are they in their office? Do they have a studio space? You could recommend, in the same way that you might do for yourself, if they have kids or spouses in the house that are also trying to use the connection at the same time, maybe encourage them to turn that off. These are just all really great best practices to set your guest up for success in the same way that you would, and just make for a better, better flow all the way through.
100%. I mean, the funny thing is that, I mean, you could.
Wants to know.
Actually, I'll answer that question in a second.
Part of that is Dan has like the best possible, like, soothing, quiet, wonderful radio voice.
So I haven't even got proximity effect. If I start talking closer to the microphone now without brushing my beard on it, then proximity effect apparently helps as well.
There you go. There you go.
I could have another alternative job, apparently in a certain industry that is banned by YouTube. But let's not go there. But going back to the interview, what I would say is, with your guests, yes, everything we've been talking about here would help. I mean, send a checklist even, get in an environment that has, as few like hard, solid walls as possible. If you've got wooden flooring, chuck a couple of blankets down on the floor, minimize, reverb and reflections of audio, plug into a physical connection if you've got one. If not, make sure the kids aren't streaming 4K movies. I mean, it's all applicable, and it's just a checklist. In answer to the question about about the microphone, the funny thing is this is actually a Shure SM57 microphone, which is the same. It's mainly for like drums and things like that, but it's the same microphone, like the internals effectively, as the SM7B, except without the built-in pop filter. But all I've got ducking and other bits set up on my Rodecaster. So I basically didn't spend $300 and whatever on a Shure SM7B. I spent about $60 on this, and I bought a Rodecaster instead. So, like, happy days, yay me.
Smart gear management. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, you can actually make this sound exactly like a 7B.
For a moment, Dan got blurry. I, to be clear, am not yet practicing what we preach. I am on Wi-Fi, and I am in my home, and my two children are on video calls for school right now. So the timing of this was, I'm slowly updating and paying attention to best practices.
It's windy. It's here, But I mean, not be funny, but it's windy. Outside of this building, the internet connection is over phone lines, not underground fiber. So it's windy and raining via overhead telephone connection.
Yep.
So I don't have a fiber connection coming into this building. It's residential pretty much in terms of its connectivity. So again, I'm just as susceptible to atmospheric interference as everyone else is. And yes, an SM57, not an SM58. They are different.
All
Sorry,
right.
talking about microphones still.
We have Jerry Smith on, and Jerry wants to know, he's located in a rural location and bandwidth is relatively limited. He's been considering a bit of software to bundle two connections to increase reliability. The system appears to use a VPN. Is there upside or downside to that kind of arrangement?
So it depends on how you do bonded connections. If you're bonding the connections together, where it's bonded at your end and it's bonded at the telco's end, and it's effectively is presented to the outside world as one single connection, then that's fine. I mean, back in the day, if I go back 20 years and make myself feel even older than I already feel, the way that we often used to get connectivity to areas slightly outside of cities would be to get what's actually called an ISDN 30. So it's a bundle of 64 kilobits a second ISDN lines, and bundle all those 64 K lines together and present that as one big internet pipe. And it's just connectivity at the end of the day, which was fine. If, however, they're bonding the connection together, but they're not bonding the bandwidth together, then actually what you have isn't necessarily two connections. Sorry, it isn't one connection through two lines. It's actually two different connections, which means you could do two different streams, but not one stream together. So it really depends on what kind of bonding they're talking about. Does that make sense?
It does to me. So if anyone else needs clarity, definitely.
I mean, the marketing people out there would, they always confuse things. I mean, I remember in the hosting world, people start talking about big data. And like you asked 50 different marketers what big data was, you get 50 different answers. Basically, it's the hell of a lot of compute off of big dedicated servers and server clusters. That's basically big data with a database engine. But marketers made it sound so more complicated than it was.
I love Carl's shout out to bad weather when trying to stream. It's so true.
Yes.
I mean, there are things.
It's so windy here.
There are things you can control, and there are things that you can't control. And really, when it comes down to it, you're going to have to think through, how important is the content that you're streaming? Are you doing it for yourself? Are you, or doing it for a client? Do you have a really high profile guest coming on? And you're going to have to prepare all of your contingencies and structure, the flow of your content and the time, and thinking through, how you're going to get it out there. All of those kinds of things come into play depending on what the content is. For a little bit more of a laid back live stream, like what we're doing right now, where we're taking questions, we're in our Ecamm fam community, it probably is going to matter a little bit less. You guys are all really nice. If this was to all, crash on me and go crazy, which it absolutely has in the past, for the most part, you are all fairly patient and we can get content back up later. If I was interviewing...
It's a really good point though, isn't it?
Queen,
about the mindset.
It might be a little different, right?
Yeah, but it's the mindset of being a creator and doing what we do. I mean, I watched the stream that Nick Nimmin did. This is a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know how old it was. I couldn't even tell you what the title was. It was all about, it was one of his Q&A streams, but he lives in Thailand. And there was a tornado going on. You could hear the thunder overhead. Like, it sounded bad, right? His internet dropped out a couple of times, but he flicked from his desktop to his mobile, back to his desktop, back to his mobile, like 2 or 3 times throughout that whole stream. But he was like, it's what it's like. His life as a creator, we should carry on. And even said, if people don't like the fact that I'm switching from mobile to desktop and desktop back to mobile, and I'm just rolling with it, as long as I'm giving good content, if people are going to complain about that, it's like, go and subscribe.
I'm here answering your questions. I mean, the goal of that entire broadcast was just for him to show up and answer questions. So
exactly. So there is a mindset element to this as well, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, Al has a great question. So we've been talking a lot about this, as the world is opening up a little bit more, people are trying to get out and are doing, more events where they might be on the go a little bit more, mobile. They're bringing their laptops with them. What are the best solutions if you are on the go or you're on site at an event?
So I'm going to go against some of what I've been saying slightly, but there's going to be caveats to this. Okay. Now, all mobile internet service is inherently, by nature of its existence and the way it's structured, it is variable.
Yeah.
However, if you think that you've got an internet connection that's remote, mobile broadband, or or whatever it may be, you've got like metropolitan-based Wi-Fi, you've got all sorts of different kind of wireless-based connections these days.
Mm-hmm.
If that bandwidth that you've got provided to you is big enough, when actually, even if it's variable, it's not going to be variable below the point at which you need it to be for upload speed, then they should be fine, right? So if I got like a 5G mobile connection and I had full 5G signal and it was a clear day, and even if the signal dropped to like 2 bars and I still had enough bandwidth there to do like a 3 meg or a 6 meg, 1080p upload, then it doesn't matter, because it's still variable enough. But if the signal was only ever at 2 bars and it drops down to 1, then you're going to be having problems. There is no, unfortunately, there's no simple answer to this, because it depends on where you are, what the weather's like, who the provider is, the time of day, atmospheric interference, competition for the services in your area. If you've ever been to a conference, and Katie would contest to this, you're in a conference and almost every conference provider would have like a mobile Wi-Fi hotspot kind of like tucked underneath the desk or something, so they can connect to the internet to their phones. And because some conference halls and conference centers will have connectivity, some won't, some will have it, but it's terribly bad. So you have a hotspot
shared,
there.
Right. Yeah. So it's definitely.
But when you've got 50 hotspots in a convention hall, it's still bad. So it depends on the environment as well. It really is a hard one to answer, because the answer is it depends.
And I mean, I think what we've been saying to people is, have a couple of different backups. Have a plan A, a plan B, plan C. So maybe the plan A is that you've spoken to the space and you think that the internet's going to be reliable enough, and that's your plan A. But you also have a hotspot, that's your plan B, and you've got some additional additional hotspot or another different option in case everything everything falls apart.
Backups for your backups.
But definitely I would always suggest like going in and actually going to the space in advance if you're able to, and certainly talking to the event manager or whoever is in charge of the space to get as much information. Sometimes they'll offer like extra, like we when we were at Social Media Marketing World, we always just paid extra for a wired connection, and I'm sure it drove the conference all crazy, but they were willing to do it for a fee. So, and for that fee, it was worth it for us because we were there to live stream, and we just didn't think that it was reliable enough to be able to do that with a wired.
You had backups, right?
And we had backups, right? Yeah, exactly.
Mobile backup. So mobile Wi-Fi was probably backup number 1.
Yep.
Tethering to your phone was probably backup number 2.
Yep. So we had some options for sure. And it looks like because irony, Andrew, I'm sorry if you're experiencing buffering in this broadcast. I feel like it's just going to be one of those ironic things for today. I will make sure that if
it's raining outside, if that helps,
we upload the.
It might be me.
It's Dan's fault. It's entirely Dan's fault. Al says that he relies on cellular service providers for data using a hotspot. He does find the smaller service providers have more consistent speeds. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the country. I mean, over here in the UK, I'm not sure about US providers. Some providers are better than others. Some of them, they lean very much on data first, like 3, for example. They're always pushing data first as a thing. Other providers, they leverage on coverage, but not necessarily speed or connectivity, reliability. But some of the other providers, there's one called GIFGAF over here, which actually uses the network of EE, but they use wholesale kind of connectivity. So they haven't got the contention. Again, contention exists, probably should have said this earlier. Contention ratios exist in mobile providers just as much as they do normal, residential network providers. It's the same thing exists. And every every provider that you have, they have the ability to control that contention. So if they're very, very much all after, like, making the shareholders happy, then they're going to ramp that contention ratio up.
Yeah, they
because
want the
they
most.
just want more money. Yes, providers, B2B providers, those that are, well, very few of them are actually independently owned still, but those few that are tend to be better for connectivity. I mean, I used to use a company over here in the UK called Fastnet, which was they're based in Brighton down on the coast, and they were a business-to-business internet provider, as competitive as the big players, but I always had a better, more reliable connection with them, because they weren't pushing their barriers or boundaries nearly as much as the others were.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, it helps to shop around for sure.
Yeah, and to know, I mean, again, to know your options and to have a really good understanding of your realities as well. So, that's things like knowing where you're broadcasting from, knowing whether or not you are, wired or wireless, knowing what time your content is at, and is that going to cause an effect? Like, are you trying to live stream during a really popular time in the area that you're in? What else did we cover? Definitely, having a good understanding of whether you're residential or business, and if you need to make those differences or those changes. Absolutely. Doing a speed test to double check that if, the level of quality that you're sending out, so whether you're 720 all the way up to 4K, it's going to affect your upload speed. So you definitely want to be considering that.
There's something to mention there as well about, often providers are, again, they're not always the problem. Often as creators, our level of kind of almost like creative ego, we make a rod for our own backs.
Expectations are up here.
Well, sometimes yes, that is true. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've been really, and this, we've talked about this before, I've been meaning to start a YouTube channel for a while now. I did a couple of videos last year, got really bogged down in some like crazy stuff. I was going to start a YouTube video again earlier this year. In case you notice, it's not something I'm ready to talk about publicly, but it's not been a good year on a personal point of view. So why, but it's all stopped me from doing what I wanted to do, because I've wanted to start this YouTube channel for a while. But when I was looking at my creation flow, before, it was like, film the video, get separate audio, sync those up into Final Cut Pro, get the background audio going. I was going in 4K because, I wanted like the best quality ever and all that sort of stuff. But then when it came to it, I was just like, I don't care about 4K, because I mean, most of the people aren't going to be watching my content on their TV at home in a 4K streaming environment. They're going to be watching on their phones. So 1080p is fine. Okay, cool. I don't need multiple audios because I've got like a Rodecaster and I've got Ecamm, and I can record locally on Ecamm as well. So I don't need to record on my camera and sync up audio later. So I'd have to do that either. So actually, so now I just record videos in Ecamm as like a mini live stream, and it's up in 1080p, upload, job done. But if I hadn't had that mentality, then I would still be trying to do everything in 4K with multiple audio tracks and like high level of productivity and production quality and everything. But no one really cared about that more than I did. And the same thing goes for streaming.
It is worth, it is worth noting, like, what are your goals? What are you actually trying to accomplish? Because it is very, very easy there's so many amazing tools out there that do so many things. It's a challenge that our team has all the time internally. It's not that it's the wrong tool, or it's not that it's not a really cool thing for us to add on, but do we have time to actually use it? Is it going to help us make things more efficient and still get the quality that we want? Or is it actually going to make things a lot more complicated and, add on a whole bunch of different layers to it? And sometimes,
I mean,
streamlining.
If I was doing a collab, if I was doing some sort of collaborative content creation with, I don't know, Peter McKinnon, then I'll be like, crap, I need to really massively up level my gear game. But if I'm streaming to people who are like solo creators and creative entrepreneurs like I do, who most of the time, like 90% of them consume it off their phones, then even 720p is fine. And I do it in 1080 with decent quality audio because I've got a nice enough mic, but I haven't spent even crazy money on a mic either.
Yeah.
I think it's enough to give your audience what they need, but not too much that it becomes a rod for your own back.
Yeah, you'd rather be consistent. I mean, consistently and reliably providing them with valuable content than being overwhelmed at trying to keep up with your workflow. So I think that's really
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want to be sensitive in time, Dan, because I know that you have to run here soon, and we haven't had any more questions coming through. So I'm
mentoring 14 different startups at the moment as well. So I'm literally ducking out of this and going straight back into mentoring 14 different Italian startups remotely via Zoom.
We hang in there. We believe in you.
I know.
But
Zoom. Oh my God.
I said don't tell Doc that you shoot in 720p. I know, never tell Doc that. I really
Doc, yes, 720. I like it. It's the best resolution for all video creators. I don't care what you say. Come and fight me. I'm kidding. No, I won't really. Like mic drop.
I love it. I love it. Well, we really super appreciate the time, and we appreciate everyone popping on with phenomenal questions. And I definitely, I really, I've learned a lot, and now I'm really thinking through, what are the changes that I can make here in my space that will make a difference, going forward for what I'm trying to accomplish when I'm here at home. And I hope that everyone watching, you're able to think through what changes you might want to make, whether that's, updating or adding internet information into your guest checklist, or maybe making a guest checklist if you don't have one yet.
Checklist the key. Yep.
Thinking through what time you're scheduling shows at, thinking through and approaching whether or not learning a little bit more about what your internet connection actually is, doing a speed test and just double checking that it's going to make sense. And making those improvements where you're able to. I think it really goes a long way as you have a better understanding of what you're trying to achieve and what you need to get there. So internet is super important, and we're glad that we're able to do this session today. So we don't have a lot of other content on it. So hopefully we can take this and repackage it up into a checklist, be able to get it to you guys as well. But thank you so much for your time, Dan. Hang in there, and good luck for the rest of your day. And
no worries. Any questions anyone's got, then just drop them in comments, DM me,
Dan's
whichever.
in this community,
you're welcome to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we always keep.
We're doing Leaping Live soon, aren't we?
We are. Shh, Dan, shh. We are working on Leap into Live Streaming Bootcamp year 2, and we are launching that in September. We pushed it to September so we had enough time to build up and promo throughout the summer. So it is coming, you guys.
I shouldn't have said that, should I?
It's all good. We can release early for the 8 people that are left.
You heard it here first. Thank you. You're welcome. Buy me a coffee if you want to.
We will talk to everyone soon. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everyone, for watching.
Cheers all.